the grand obsidian spire of the Valari Dominion pierced the smog-choked skies of Oros Prime like a jagged tooth. Inside the High Sovereign Chamber, the air smelled of burning incense, cold sulfur, and the metallic tang of heavy shielding. High Sovereign Valentor sat atop his tiered throne of crystallized void glass, 6 meters above the polished marble floor. His 4 compound eyes gleamed with cold amusement, their iridescent facets catching the violet illumination of the imperial braziers. Flanking him stood 500 nobles of the high houses, cloaked in woven light and shimmering mantle silk. Surrounding the perimeter, 2 full cohorts of the Imperial Praetorian Guard leaned on their kinetic poleaxes, plates of dark Ceratec armor humming with containment fields. At the center of the vast expanse of floor, dwarfed by the towering architecture and the suffocating sea of armored predators, stood 3 figures in dark charcoal diplomatic suits. Earth's first envoy, Ambassador Aaron Vance, a junior aide with white knuckles clutching a digital slate, and a solitary, broad-shouldered security escort in an unadorned black utility uniform. Vance was an older man with silvering temples, worn lines around his eyes, and the quiet, immovable posture of someone who had spent 4 decades negotiating treaties in trench bunkers and ruined orbital stations. Valentor leaned forward, his elongated jaw mandibles clicking in rhythm with the imperial translator. "You speak of borders, Vance," the Emperor drawled, his voice carrying the booming resonance of the room's acoustic baffles. "You speak of resource rights along the Perseus corridor as though your fledgling republic holds equal standing with the Dominion. For 3 solar rotations, we have indulged your tedious counsels, but the time for polite fiction has expired." A low murmur of chuckles rippled through the assembled alien nobility. Chitinous claws rapped against decorative breastplates in mockery. Ambassador Vance did not blink. The Treaty of Calum established clear navigational boundaries. Sovereign, the Republic asked for nothing that was not ratified under interstellar maritime law. If your frontier patrol ships continue to seize earthbound grain freighters, the consequences will not be confined to diplomatic channels.
Consequences?
Valentor let out a grating, rasping laugh that was instantly echoed by hundreds of courtiers. "You bring 3 apes into the heart of an empire spanning 30 systems and speak of consequences. Look above you, human." The Emperor gestured with an ornate, 3-fingered scepter toward the grand vaulted dome, where holographic tactical overlays rotated slowly. 3 Imperial battle fleets hold low orbit over this planet. A single orbital bombardment wing could sterilize your ancestral rock before your border outposts could even relay a distress signal. The Emperor's voice dropped into a dark, venomous register. "You will not debate terms today, Ambassador. You will deliver your species into our fold. You will submit to the Valari Dominion as an indentured protectorate, and you will begin by assuming the posture befitting a servant of the throne." The Emperor snapped his claws. "Kneel." The word echoed off the polished obsidian pillars, sharp and final. Ambassador Vance stood completely still. His hands remained folded behind the small of his back. "Representatives of the United Earth Republic do not kneel. Sovereign. In this court, every lesser creature bows," Valentor hissed. "Kneel, or your head will roll across these stones, and we will broadcast the footage to your parliament as our formal declaration of conquest." The court erupted into jeering laughter. Gilded aristocrats raised their glasses of fermented nectars, snorting and trilling in open contempt. To them, the humans were frail, unarmored bipeds whose technology relied on primitive thermal kinetics and crude warp drives, upstarts who had only ventured into deep space 3 centuries prior. From the left flank of the dais, the Emperor's vanguard champion stepped forward. His name was Crane, an 8-foot-tall brute of the Gore Valari subcaste, bred specifically for planetary shock warfare. His carapace was grafted with thick titanium carbide plating, and in his 4 massive upper arms he held a twin-bladed disruption glaive, crackling with blinding blue ionization that smelled of scorched ozone. Crane descended the marble stairs with thunderous, deliberate steps, his heavy combat greaves cracking the microtile beneath his weight. He stopped 3 paces from Ambassador Vance, casting a shadow that swallowed the older man whole. The Sovereign gave a command, fragile one. Crane's sub-vocalizer growled, a vibration that rattled Vance's rib cage. The champion raised the massive glaive, angling the glowing edge just an inch from the human diplomat's collarbone. The heat from the disruption field singed the fabric of Vance's lapel. "On your knees, or I sever your spine," the young human aide gasped, taking an involuntary half-step backward, clutching the data slate against his chest. Ambassador Vance's jaw tightened, but his eyes never left the Emperor's throne. He did not flinch. "Do it!" Valentor commanded from his perch above. "Break him!" Crane shifted his grip to slam the flat of his weapon into the envoy's kneecap. Before the heavy blade could complete its arc, a figure stepped smoothly between the ambassador and the executioner. It was the bodyguard. He had moved without a sound. No motorized whir of exo-servos, no hiss of pressurized hydraulics. He was just suddenly there, standing directly in Crane's path. The guard was a tall man, clad in a plain, matte black ballistic tunic, without rank insignia, medals, or energy-shielding harness. His face was weathered, marked by a faded shrapnel scar that ran from his left cheekbone down into the collar of his shirt. His gray eyes were flat, calm, and utterly devoid of fear. Crane paused, his lower mandibles twitching in bafflement. He looked at the unarmored human before him as an armored juggernaut might look at an insect stepping in front of a tread. "Out of the way, worm!" Crane sneered. Lifting a heavy, gauntleted arm to swat the man aside, the human bodyguard did not reach for an energy pistol. He did not activate a personal deflector. Instead, with a slow, deliberate movement of his right hand, he reached behind his waist. Shh, shh. The sound of metal sliding out of a reinforced kydex sheath cut through the vast silence of the chamber. It was not a thermal edge blade. It was not a micro-vibrational weapon or an ionized energy dagger. It was a heavy carbonized combat knife, 8 inches of blackened high-carbon tool steel, worn gray along the bevel from countless sharpenings. Its surface was pitted by age, showing microscopic scuffs and chemical stains from a dozen forgotten campaign grounds. Stamped deep into the base of the blade near the crossguard was a single, faded marking in faded crimson paint. A stylized silhouette of an anvil split down the center by a lightning bolt, underlined by the Roman numerals 7B. The human bodyguard held the knife in a low, loose grip, pointed directly at the floor. Crane let out a booming laugh, rearing back to strike. "You pull a kitchen toy against a vanguard champion." Hold. The scream came not from the throne, but from the elevated gallery where the Dominion's High Military Council sat. Grand Marshal Vorax Tell, a 400-year-old veteran whose 4 compound eyes were cloudy with battle scars, lunged against the ornate balustrade. His armored hands gripped the stone rail so hard the crystalline polish splintered. His scales had turned an ashen, mottled gray. The Valari physiological response to absolute, paralyzing dread. The entire court went dead silent at the marshal's outburst. "My lord, tell!" Emperor Valentor frowned, annoyed by the interruption. "What is the meaning of this?" "Look at the blade!" The old marshal croaked, his voice trembling so violently the translator struggled to synthesize the cadence. "By the ancestral core, look at the stamp on the steel." Crane hesitated, lowering his glaive by a fraction to peer down at the pitted metal in the human's hand. Other elderly commanders in the high stalls leaned forward, their ocular lenses whirring as they zoomed in on the red anvil and the Roman numerals. Slowly, the color drained from the faces of every officer in the room over the age of 200. 32 solar cycles ago, before the Valari Dominion had encountered the human republic, there was another great empire in this quadrant, the Vorax hegemony. They were an apex civilization of predatory conquerors who commanded over 8,000 dreadnoughts, millions of warrior clones, and planetary defense networks deemed utterly impenetrable by galactic standards. When the hegemony encroached upon human frontier colonies, Earth did not dispatch ambassadors. They did not send requests for negotiation. They dispatched the 7th Orbital Breacher Division, called sign Iron Anvil. The 7th Division did not fight fleet battles. They did not duel in open space. They dropped suborbital kinetic spikes directly through planetary crusts, boarded enemy flagships by manually breaching their fusion reactor rooms, and waged close-quarters warfare inside the dark corridors of dreadnoughts using raw physical brutality, thermal charges, and high-carbon trench steel. They fought with a terrifying, relentless madness that ignored mortal wounds, clearing entire battlecruisers corridor by corridor until the decks ran slick with hemolymph. In 18 standard months, the entire military cast of the Vorax hegemony had been exterminated down to the last command bunker. Their homeworld was reduced to a cracked slag heap. The hegemony ceased to exist as a political entity overnight, becoming an empty graveyard across 15 sectors. The Valari had picked through the ruins of those shattered star fortresses decades later. In every breached command deck, embedded in the control consoles of dead admirals, they had found identical blackened steel knives stamped with that red anvil, Iron Anvil, whispered General Shrakar, his voice barely a gasp in the gallery. "The 7th breachers. They don't send the 7th to guard ambassadors." The bodyguard looked up. For the first time, he met the eyes of Emperor Valentor. His voice was quiet, raspy, and completely level. "We retired this knife 30 years ago," the human said, his words echoing across the silent marble. "We told the galaxy we were diplomats now. We told everyone Earth had put its monsters in cages." The human raised his left hand to the small communication node nestled against his collarbone. He pressed a thumb against the transmitter and spoke a single, classified alphanumeric sequence into the open channel, Golgotha 07. "The hammer is hot." For 2 full seconds, nothing happened. Then the world shook. A low subterranean rumble rolled through the foundations of the obsidian palace. The crystalline chandeliers swung violently on their titanium chains. The violet braziers flickered and died as an immense localized electromagnetic pulse surged through the city's power grid. Tactical consoles across the throne room began screaming in shrill, red alert frequencies. Holographic status maps flickered wildly, turning from tranquil blue to blood red. "Status report!" Valentor roared, rising from his throne in a panic, his mandibles flaring. "What is happening?" Sensors are going blind. The chief operations officer shrieked from the tech pit, his forearms scrambling across the failing terminal interface. Massive spatial displacement signatures. Right above us. Inside the planetary gravity well. Impossible, Valentor barked. No ship can bypass the orbital defense grid without dropping sublight at the outer boundary. They didn't drop sublight at the perimeter, the officer cried, his voice breaking into hysteria. They jump-vectored directly into the stratosphere. High above the palace, the reinforced atmospheric glass dome groaned under atmospheric displacement. Through the transparent dome, the dark night sky of the capital city tore open. Space itself seemed to shatter like black glass as 6 gargantuan shapes materialized through raw warp ruptures just 4 kilometers above the palace spires. They were not sleek, elegant vessels like the Valari cruisers. They were colossal, angular slabs of matte black carbon composite armor and reinforced durasteel, Earth Republic Goliath-class super dreadnoughts. Their immense bulk displaced millions of tons of air, sending atmospheric shockwaves crashing down against the capital city in a sonic roar that rattled the palace walls down to their bedrock. The hum of their massive antimatter containment cores vibrated through the floorboards, an all-encompassing physical drone that set the alien nobility's teeth on edge. The colossal ventral weapon bays of all 6 dreadnoughts slowly ground open, revealing clusters of macrokinetic railgun barrels, each wide enough to swallow a fighter craft whole, charged with red-hot particle energy, pointing directly down at the Imperial Palace. Torrenting lasers, hundreds of piercing, brilliant crimson beams punched through the skylight, painting the walls, the throne, and the chests of the alien council in a web of geometric slaughter. 3 distinct crimson dots settled directly over the Emperor's chest. On the floor of the throne room, Crane the Champion stood frozen, his disruption glaive trembling in his 4 hands. He looked at the human bodyguard. The bodyguard hadn't moved. The ancient steel knife was still resting in his right hand, ready. Ambassador Vance smoothed the front of his charcoal suit jacket with deliberate calm. He checked his wrist chronometer, brushed an invisible speck of dust from his sleeve, and looked up at the trembling emperor on his glass throne. "As I was saying, Sovereign," Vance said, his voice ringing crisp and clear over the wailing klaxons and the deafening rumble of orbiting dreadnoughts. "The Republic considers the Perseus Corridor an open and free trading lane. Our grain shipments will proceed under full naval escort, beginning immediately." Valentor sank slowly back into his throne. The grand scepter slipped from his trembling claws, clattering down the marble steps. His 4 eyes stared upward at the 6 pitch-black warships hovering like executioners over his world. The Emperor swallowed hard, his voice barely a rasp over the comm speakers. Your terms are accepted, Ambassador." Ambassador Vance gave a polite, measured nod. "A pleasure doing business with the Dominion. Good day, Sovereign." The envoy turned on his heel and walked toward the grand exit doors, his junior aide scurrying quickly behind him with wide, disbelieving eyes. The bodyguard lingered for just a moment. He looked at the champion Crane, then down at his knife. With a single fluid motion, he flipped the blade around, pressed the steel back into the scabbard until it clicked shut with a sharp thwip, and turned his back on the Emperor of 30 Worlds.